Bonjour à tous, nous allons commencer dans quelques minutes, merci. Nous attendons encore quelques participants. Céline, Laetitia, je propose de commencer. Bonjour à tous, je me présente, Patrick Bachet, EY, je serai le modérateur pour cette session. Tout d'abord, bienvenue à cette première Les rencontres du digital de l'ASLOG. Aujourd'hui, notre thème est Démystifions l'IA pour la supply chain. Vous avez été nombreux à participer à l'événement Risque l'an dernier et nous exprimer votre souhait d'aller plus en avant sur certaines thématiques. Alors aujourd'hui, nous commençons la série de ces rencontres avec l'IA. Ensuite suivront RPA, l'IoT, Data Exchange, ces premières semaines et ces prochains mois. L'objectif de notre session aujourd'hui, c'est de vous donner un éclairage concret sur des use cases d'IA pour la supply chain. Bon, l'IA est un sujet qui peut être perçu comme très technique et en constante évolution. Un élément de disruption pour les business models. Mais l'objectif aujourd'hui, c'est de parler de choses simples, mais surtout de choses qui marchent et qui apportent de la valeur. Alors pour ce faire, on a convié autour de la table virtuelle 3 intervenants. Donc Emmanuel Cadet, Michelin, Supply Chain Engineer, qui présentera un use case sur comment anticiper les ruptures donc chez Michelin. Martin Sarraud, LVMH, Supply Chain Innovation et Project Manager, qui présentera un use case sur comment mieux piloter le lancement des nouveaux produits. Enfin, Deepak Dharasima Murthy, qui est associé EY, qui est basé en Inde, donc ça va nous permettre de switcher en anglais dans quelques minutes, et qui nous présentera un use case sur cognitive planning réalisé pour un leader du CPG. Alors, côté participants, nous sommes environ une vingtaine, je compte exactement 18. Nous avons des représentants de sociétés telles que Geodis, GEFCO, GS1, Daer, Arkema, Trivium Packaging. Ma liste n'est pas exhaustive et veuillez m'excuser si j'ai oublié quelqu'un. Alors en matière d'interaction, parce que dû au Covid, on fait cette session en format un peu virtuel, on souhaite évidemment que ce soit un échange. Alors on souhaite évidemment vous apporter toutes les réponses que vous attendez sur l'IA. Nos experts sont ici présents. Et pour que ce soit plus interactif, en fait, vous avez la possibilité de lever la main au travers de l'application à laquelle vous êtes connecté. Et si vous levez la main, vous avez le droit, même l'opportunité de parler et de poser des questions. Sinon, il y a aussi le système de chat. Moi-même, Céline et Laetitia seront bienveillants pour voir s'il y a des questions qui sont posées et nous les transmettrons donc à nos présentateurs. Voilà, un dernier point, comme je disais, oui.
Oui, parfait, ça marche. OK, donc en levant la main, ça me permet d'activer le micro. Super.
Oui, alors si tu lèves ta main, effectivement, ça permet de. Il y a Céline ou Laetitia qui vont te donner la parole. Sinon, on peut utiliser simplement le chat. Voilà. OK. Et maintenant, je propose qu'on switch en anglais si personne n'y voit d'inconvénient. Sinon, vous pouvez lever la main et on switchera en français puisque la première présentation est avec Deepak sur Cognitive Planning. Voilà, merci à vous et à très vite. Deepak, if you are okay, you can start now your presentation. Laetitia should give you the hand to be able to present.
Sure, Patrick, yes. So will I be made a presenter? Hi everyone, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Let me know. I mean,
Yes, we can
just
see your
give me
screen.
1 minute,
Back.
please. Just give me 1 minute, please. Yeah. There's some lag here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deepak, partner with EY. Patrick kind of introduced me. I focus quite extensively on supply chain and optimization. So what I'm going to cover today is a solution around using cognitive planning, using advanced artificial intelligence, a neural network-based model, which we deployed for a large consumer product company. It's a global consumer product company with presence in all across the world, US, Europe, India, APAC, and all of those countries. I'll just give a background of what the solution does. If you look at any analytic solution, any decision support system, it could be in the area of inventory planning, it could be in the area of transportation planning, trade promotion optimization, any of the solution, if you really look at it, what it really has is a planning engine or an algorithm engine or an engine that really does all the number crunching. There is a visualization layer for output, and most importantly, there is a layer in which users play around with input parameters. For example, when somebody is looking at inventory optimization, you are looking at really balancing conflicting objectives such as inventory holding cost, which is working capital tied up, the service level that you need to maintain, the transportation cost. So you're trying to optimize the overall cost to serve model. And each of these engines will have their own input parameters, and they will have weights, or I would say order of priority for each of these conflicting business objectives. Now, any planner or any user of an analytic solution, what he does is that you open a system, you take a particular run, you run it and you look at a certain results, then you accept that result as a good result, or you go ahead and change those input parameters. The input parameters could be changed as saying that, okay, now let me value service level more than inventory. Let me value capacity utilization more than service level. Those kind of rules, and then you rerun the solution. Now, whenever you rerun a solution so many times, or whenever you do simulations for so many times, there is a certain time that is lost before, let's say, you accept of a final plan. What this really does, it puts an artificial intelligence layer for it to come up with these input parameters as if mimicking the way a human being would have done it with the tool. For example, if you look at the cognitive automation solution, and let's say there is a planner. If I am a planner and I know that for my product categories, every time in the past, given a certain demand and supply situation, I might have always given inventory balance as a higher priority than service level, or I can say that service level has to be given a higher priority than inventory holding. So these kind of rules, by the way a human would have interacted, the system learns by looking at past data. We log into any kind of planning execution system, get the historical decisions that one would have taken, and then the AI engine runs and gives you almost a near optimal set of input parameters, so that this entire simulation time can be saved, right? So this is what I've explained. If you look at on the left side, there are decision variables, typical cost profiles, optimization profiles, etc. There is input data. Then you evaluate the goodness of plan basis service level, stock to norm ratio, capacity utilization, etc. Now, every time in the past, it looks at what was the decision variable looking like, what was the input data looking like, and how was the goodness of plan looking like at that point of time. Now, if I walk into a client like this, who's a consumer product company who runs sales and operations planning, let's say twice a month, I have, maybe if I take 2 years of data, I have more than 50 data points, which will tell me that in 50 instances, how was the input data, how was the corresponding output and goodness of a plan, and what was the values really that decision variables took. Given this kind of understanding, the system then builds a rule-based or builds an AI-based approach, so that whenever you get a newer set of input data, whenever you get a new, for example, today I am a planner, I open my laptop, I see that my product category has a certain demand. I know that my factories has a certain capacity. Now, given that demand capacity, demand supply scenario, going by the way a planner would have interacted with the system in the past, it goes and the neural network runs and comes up and says, hey, look, for this kind of scenario, this should be the right decision variable profile or input variable profile. That is what this solution is about. I'll show you a video as well on this. So most importantly, what did it do to the client? The biggest thing is it freed up a lot of planners' time. This was implemented for a rough cut capacity planning scenario, midterm planning in a month level granularity. Earlier, what they would take about 2 days for a planner to conclude a S&OP meeting by running simulations. Today, they are able to do in 1 to 2 hours. We have implemented this in Europe, and there is a significant reduction, about 20-25% reduction in headcount, because a lot of activities for simulation around data collection, around simulation was all being taken. And most importantly, the error rate and the quality of output, which are clearly direct metrics of supply chain, those have improved. So that's the that is what the solution has done. And what this did is we have got motivated now to take an AI-based approach, not just for production planning problems, but as I said earlier, for any analytic engine, which will have input-output parameters to be defined. Right? Let me just quickly take you through the video. Are you able to see my video screen?
Yes, Deepak.
Yeah. Yeah. So as the video explains. Yeah. So I've explained all these. I will not get into this, but I will just get into key things here. So first of all, this is built on the SAP APO landscape, because rough cut capacity planning was being done using SAP APO in this company. What we have done is we have used 2 components. We have used RPA for extracting data out of SAP APO. That is really to automate data extraction jobs, to really log into SAP, get the data, get demand, supply, master data, and all of that. Then we have used a combination of R and Python for doing AI-based. We built a neural network. We've used a convoluted neural network for building this, and I'll show you how we have done that. So this is all logging into SAP system. It's for a particular product location. If you see on the screen here, you can see these are all the demand supply scenario for a given particular point of time. We are extracting this data outside, and most importantly, if you see here on the Excel sheet here, you will see these are the different rules: non-delivery penalty, production cost, procurement. These are all coefficients or penalties that a planner will tinker. One is a 0, something could be a 4, 5, 4, etc. So the way one does simulation is going and changing these parameters. A 0 could become 5, a 4 could become 2. What the system will do is predict what should be the right set of weights for this engine. Now we pass this to R. There's a neural network that is getting built here. So if you see here on the screen, V1, V2, V3, all of them are different data sets that are there. And looking at each of the data set in the past, a neural network is getting refined. And you can see on the right, W1, W2 to W12, those are different weights, which I just showed you earlier. They are getting computed. The neural network keeps getting refined till it finds the most ideal set of weights so that the goodness of the plan can be maximized. And Once it generates those weights, it comes back and puts it back into the cost profile of SAP APO. If you can see here, there are those 12 different weights. This is what the AI engine has calculated. And this is where 16 hours or 12 to 16 hours of time a planner used to spend, because you see the number of permutation and combination somebody has to do to keep changing. You know, sometimes you make a production process model as 5, you run, you do not like the output, you go back and change it. You know, all that kind of I would say a push-pull kind of thing that you keep doing with the parameters. Those are computed. Now, once that is computed, the bot puts it back into the SAP system or the APO planning system, and we rerun the optimizer for different set of weights. So we are running the model right now. This is happening after the optimizer weights were computed, and there are optimizer profiles. And you go back and you download the results to check if the RPA downloads the result to check if the bot generated and the AI engine has generated the right parameters. And then once you know that the results are fine, you then kind of accept the result, or you can manually go and tweak it a little more further, and then finally kind of log off from the system. So in the area of decision support, in any advanced engine that is there, how an AI-based approach to learn from a user's interaction with the tool is what we have done here. And this is one of the newer ways of using a decision support system, I would say. Any questions? Happy to take any questions, and you know, I can discuss.
Thank you very much, Deepak, for your presentation. Yes, if there is any question, you can raise your hand or in the chat.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
you.
you.
We can hear.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cedric from GS1 France. I represent the global organization that make standards in the business, the global language of business. You know GS1 by barcode standards or RFID standards and EDI messages. All that concerns data. My question to you, Deepak, is how do you manage structured data and non-structured data to fill your machine to make this intelligence, I would say? So how do you manage when all the data is not built on the same ontology and semantic?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, thanks for that. So we handle both structured and unstructured data. Structured data, as you saw in a system such as SAP, we log into that, get an RPA layer to do. Unstructured data, what we do is that we have web crawlers, we have NLP engines to get that. We use open source libraries. There is web.ai, which we use for NLP kind of work. What we do from the unstructured data, essentially, once we so first of all, we use, if you have to get unstructured data from the web, we use web crawlers to get that data. Then the semantic layer is defined using some things like web.ai, etc. The database is usually a MongoDB kind of database. What we then do is that we get all of this together into a data lake between structured data and unstructured data, and then we build the neural network on top of that. So I'll just give you a small example, which was done for one of the large steel manufacturer in India here. What the client had a very similar ask: how can I look at all the sentiments that are there out there in the market about steel by looking at Chinese consumption, European consumption, etc. By looking at Bloomberg, Metal Index, all of that. We use a web crawler to get the data, then process that into a MongoDB kind of database, use a NLP engine to extract sentiment. Once we extract the sentiment, we score the sentiment and make it into a structured data. And then between that data and absolute structured data that we have got, we get it into a common database and build our AI engine on top of that.
Did we answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Deepak. Because it's an utopia if we think that we will have structured data in all data sets. So it's more an utopia than a reality. So we need to find solution to make them talk between themselves.
Correct. So we have also extracted, for example, in India, for example, WhatsApp is used in a big way by Salesforce. So what we do is we get data extracted out of WhatsApp Enterprise, which is all text and scripts. For example, in a sales and operations planning process, somebody is texting saying that, you know, the brand volumes are going up by this much percentage, etc. We extract from the text, we do text mining, get the data, extract sentiment, give scoring for that, and then run our AI engine on top of that.
I have a question too. Do you hear me? Yes, is it okay?
Yes, Emmanuel.
I can hear you. Yeah.
How much time do you need between the moment you start the project and these results? And how many person work on this project?
So this project was for a particular use case, as I said, for rough cut capacity planning for Europe, for a set of factories. We finished this in about 2.5 to 3.5 months in terms of model build to starting sharing the results, etc. If the first exercise is to identify data sources, I think there was a very valid question earlier of structured, unstructured. Where are the sources of data? Once we identify the data source, we have models readily built right now for this kind of things. I would anyway say for a targeted use case, 2 to 3 months, I would say, is when somebody can start getting the first cut results. And number of people that work on this is about, I would say, about a couple of data scientists who are experts in NLP, who are experts in AI, etc. Those are the two profiles, and one or two profiles who have very strong understanding of the domain, because we'll have to keep refining these rules on the AI engine. So I would say about 3.5 persons spread over 3 months. 2 to 3 months is a time frame for solving a targeted use case.
Deepak, I have a question to you that is a bit the same as the one of Emmanuel. In a way, it's what gives a go to this company to start this proof of concept for those factories? Did they try on one factory and there was a business case and they said, okay, let's go for it and let's extend? Or
so the way we chose, so we chose a business segment. You know, we chose a particular category of segment. We didn't take a factory view because there's a network planning exercise here, and a group of factories. But most importantly, we chose a category. In this case, it was a foods category that was done. Foods category is subjected to a lot of seasonality, both in raw materials and food in terms of finished good demand as well. So we chose that category, and that category had to do a lot of simulations before final plans could be agreed. You know, we've also done very similar work for one of the tire companies, wherein they had a lot of challenges around mold availability, etc. So even there, the simulations were taking time. So any place where simulations take a lot of time, and that impacts, let's say, an overall planning cycle, or the ability for the business to react to changing circumstance, that's a good candidate for an AI approach on an analytical engine to be taken.
Thank you, Deepak. Any other questions?
I have one more too. In fact, is this solution today industrialized? It means is it used today on a daily basis by the operational, or is it, I will say, still at the POC phase, or where are we on this project, I would say, today?
So this is already being used for this product category, as I said, and is not a prototype. Now, industrial scale has a slightly different definition in this current client where this was done, because the IT board will come into play, and, you know, infrastructure, hosting, all of that comes into play. What I mean by being used on a regular basis is that planners monthly for their sales and operations planning is using this engine's output as the first pass before they start looking at the results. The end state vision is to enable this as a platform for all their divisions in Europe, and that is something that we will do only after relevant IT security, you know, host of other things that needs to be taken into account. But independently, for this category and this segment of the business, this is running already.
Thank you, Deepak. If there is no more question, I suggest we move to the next presentation with you, Emmanuel.
Can I add one question? Martin speaking.
Yes.
How did you manage to integrate the planners or the management on this? Because those are quite strategic decisions to be taken. How do you make sure that in the end, when you deploy, that everyone is confident, that you have the system is alerting on the weird point? Because obviously it's like self-driven stuff, and I mean, someone in the end has to be accountable. And how did you manage that?
So Martin, the view we have taken in any such implementation is never to replace a planner. We only will help in decision augmentation and not replacing them, because both from change management and also from the efficacy, I think there's learning to be done. So we don't want to replace them. So as I said earlier, the clear evaluation criteria for a planner is, if a back job is run in the night, next day morning he gets a report on service level, fill rate, etc. And as long as that is in line with his expectations and improving, he's able to come on board. What we are doing to the planner is not really taking off his ownership. What he used to spend a lot of time before he even starts spending time, that is what is being replaced. So if you look at a no-touch planning, lights out planning, all kind of philosophies, what we're trying to attempt here as well is so that the planner can focus on, should you add another shift to do your planning? Should you add subcontracting resource? Should you add a new line? Should you do campaigns better? Rather than looking at changing each weights and taking 10 hours to run the results. So that way we were able to convince the planner, because they also really didn't like, pressing a button, waiting for 4 hours and then realizing it didn't do a good job, again doing back and forth. So that was the way the change management was handled on this.
Thank you. Emmanuel, I suggest you start your presentation about SAM.
Yes.
So Laetitia, you should be able to. Yes. Thank you, Laetitia.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
I don't know how to. Yep. Okay. So I will present you SAM. So SAM for Service Alerting on Acting Machine. So let's go. So sorry for the first slide. It's a generic slide around supply chain. So I guess we are all experts of supply chain. So just to remind you, our supply chain, the goal is to deliver the right products at the right place, at the right time, to generate customer satisfaction. So what is complex, in fact, to meet this different objective, I will speak for Michelin, in the Michelin context. So it's figures for car tires in Europe. So only Europe, car tires. Roughly in Europe, so Europe includes Russia and Turkey for Michelin. So we sell roughly about 40 million tires per year, only for replacement market. So there is two main markets for Michelin. There is the OE market, so original equipment, means it's for the new car, and there is a replacement market. So for all of us, when our tires are old, I would say we have to replace it. And so this is this part of the market we are focusing on. And so we sell roughly 40 million tires per year. And the complexity is that the number of dimensions you have to manage. So for Michelin, so if to do the 50% of the sales, so to do 20 million sales, we need roughly 200 references to 200 different items. To add 10 million sales more, we need 500 more references. And for the last 10 million, we need the last 3,300 references. Okay, so it means we have to manage more and more small runner, what we call long tail. and it is very complex because to manage a small runner, it's hard to do some forecast, and so it's hard to when we have make the tire in our plant, to send the tire to the right distribution center in Europe in order to be as close as possible to the final customer and to sell it to him. When I start to work for Michelin, so 20 years ago, with 20 references, we used to do the same 50% sales. So we can see that to maximize our marketing footprint, I would say we have to build more and more different dimensions to be able to fit all the cars with a tire. And so the complexity of the supply chain with the year is becoming more and more complex. Okay, and our main issues, I would say today, is not really the big runner because it's quite easy to forecast, to build and so on, because we build it every day. But the challenge is really the long tail, because we have more and more references. Okay, so just to give you an idea, also we can say that Michelin, it's a big, sorry, it's a we are doing mass market. So when we see the sale 40 million, we say wow, it's a big figure. But when you divide this 4 million by all the distribution center we have in Europe, our big runner, it's only 20 tires per day per distribution center. Sorry, so the medium runner is around 4 tires per day, and you see the long tail, it's less than 1 tire per day. So it's sometimes we sell 1 tire, and some week we sell, some week we do not sell. So it's not easy for us, and this is the context where SAM is born. Okay, so the goal was to say if we were somehow able to anticipate problems, so shortage in our distribution network, so to be able to say, will I have a service failure in 15 days for a tire for a given reference in a distribution center? If I will be able somehow to anticipate such a description, and if I will be able somehow to know the root causes, is it a safety stock sizing issue? Is it a forecasting issue? So often the forecasting issue and the safety stock sizing is linked. Is it a logistic issue, a source, a production issue, and so on? Then we will be able to act on this issue and so fix it before the problem impact our customer. Okay, so it was really the goal of SAM. Are we able with an AI to predict our shortage in our distribution network at SKU level? So for an item for a distribution center, 15 days in advance. Okay. So this is the team who has worked on this subject. I don't know, I think maybe we have the same terminology, but I don't know. So I'm a special engineer, but I would say my new job is data analyst. So we call data analyst in Michelin the person who knows the métier. So I'm an expert in supply chain, and I know also the data around the métier. Okay, so I would say I'm the senior person. I work also with a junior data analyst that help me on the test. And so with 2 persons, so 2 data analysts, after the goal was to build a model to predict the shortage. So we had 2 data scientists, Maeva and Nicolas. And the data scientist, I guess everybody knows this métier. So the goal is to build model to predict with data. And the data engineer, so this person are in charge of extracting the data and save it every day in our data lake in order to have the historics, and also after to run the model every week in the case of SAM. And Frédéric Savary was the operational person that is currently using the tool every week. And so his métier is what we call an inventory manager. So he's in charge of sizing every safety stock in all the distribution, in the Michelin distribution network in Europe for all the items. And so the goal was to help him to say, with SAM, you know you will have a shortage in 15 days. You know that it is a safety stock sizing issue, because when you define a safety stock, you have some normative curve or whatever, you have some statistic. But the problem of the statistic is that it's based on hypotheses that are not, I will say, that do not reflect the reality. And so sometimes it works, usually for the big runner, but when you start to be on the long tail, on the medium runner, it becomes less right. And so the goal is really to help the inventory manager to see where the safety stock is not well sized and to fix it. So how did we do that? We have trained a machine, so we take some historics. So we put production data, so all the production plan. We put all the actual production based on the production plan. So what was really made by the plant compared to what the plant told us she will make. We put all the stock information, so the daily stock information. So in the distribution center and in the plant. We put, of course, all the order portfolio, because the goal was to predict for each orders, will we have the services or not? Okay, so with this order portfolio, somehow we have the result of the machine to train the machine. We say if the service level for a given week, for a given DC, for a given item is lower than in your situation was 80%, then we say we have a failure, a service failure. If it's above, we do not have a service failure. So we were able to train the machine compared to this indicator in order to allow the machine to do some kind of correlation between the production rate, the stock we have. We also put some logistic data, so all the lead time between the plants, the distribution center, the stock that are in the truck, and of course the delay. And so we put all this information in the machine, and the machine were able, based on all the information, to predict 15 days in advance if we had the service issue or not. Okay, and after when we have started this this process, so it's a weekly process. Every Monday morning, we load the previous week of actuals. We run the machine, and the machine tell us in 15 days you will have this issue for this item for this DC. And the goal was, yes, when we have started this machine, we have we received plenty of alerts, and I will say some of these alerts were already known by the operational. For instance, we already know that we have an industrial capacity issue. So all this alert that was generated on that was right, because the machine somehow didn't tell us you will have a shortage in 50 days. It is due to the it is due to the industrial capacity. Somehow we filter it in order to just give to the operational, so to the inventory manager, the issue linked to the forecast issue, so behind to the safety stock sizing issue. Okay, same thing for logistics. We already know where we are late, if we have some difficulties for certain lane between plant and DC. So when the system generates some alerts, we also take all the feedback from the ground, I would say, to say this alert is already known by the operational, so either by the logistic department, either by the industrial department. So our colleagues are working on it, and so the goal was really to extract the alert linked to the safety stock and forecasting issue. So this is typically the result of SAM. So sorry for this graph, but I can show you after the production. So this is typically the action of SAM. So the bar, so you have the time here. The x-axis is the time, and after you have the volume. The bar represents the order. Green bar mean when an order fall on for this item. So this is this kind of tire. So it's a nice tire. It was in Illescas, so in Spain. So you have the orders. So green mean you get the services. Red mean you didn't add the services. You have the blue area is the stock in the DC, the actual stock every day. Okay, so you can see the stock picture, and the yellow line is the forecast in our system that is currently driving. This forecast drive, of course, the deployment from the plant who build this tire to this distribution center in Spain. And you have also the safety stock, 10 tire, computed today by our system. Okay. With on the purple line is the ATP available to promise. So it's I guess you know this. In fact, you could have stock, but the stock is there. You think you have plenty of stock, but it's already, I would say, committed to old orders. So it's not available for new orders. So when the purple line is equal to 0, it means you cannot somehow serve the customer on time. And so when we were at this day, so it was on August maybe 2019, Sam told us you will have an issue in 15 days. So I don't save the picture before, but the safety stock was close to 2 tires. Okay, so the system target 2 tires. And you can see that, sorry, I should present you this also. After this gray line, this is the future. Okay, so this is the past data, this is the future data. So how do we get the future data? This is thanks to our DRP. So we have a projected stock computed by a DRP. So the DRP is using mainly the safety stock, the forecast to pull the tire in advance in our distribution center. And after, we hope that the level of stock we will have will be enough to meet the customer request. So you can see the DRP is working very well, because when we increase the safety stock in the future, the DRP is pulling the tire up to the safety stock. So at this moment, Sam sent an alert to the inventory manager. He said, if you maintain your safety stock to 2 tires, okay, then you will have an issue. And you can see that he would have probably be right, because when you see the orders compared to the forecast, probably it's linked to a forecasting issue, and the safety stock size compared to this forecasting accuracy was not enough high. So the system also proposed a recommendation to say, okay, your safety stock is this quantity, because your forecast is wrong, so I propose to increase it to this level. So we propose to increase the safety stock from 8 tires to 54. And you can see that as soon as you have set in the system this 54 tire, automatically the system pulls the tire in the distribution center, because you see the blue line is going up to the safety stock, and after the order falls, and you can see that it's already green. Always it's all green, so it means we respect the request date of the customer. Okay, so this is the main effect of SAM, and on SAM, so he's really able to predict the shortage, and today he's able also to do some recommendation. Sorry, and this is the result we had. So in this period, I can show you the last figure. I will show you after. But when we have done this study, so in red, we measure the services for all our tires where SAM has done a recommendation. And in blue, this is the services we had without SAM. So it means SAM we say Sam didn't do any recommendation, or if he did some recommendation, we were not able somehow to act because of a logistic or industrial issue. And so you can see that thanks to SAM, the service level is roughly, we have again around 7 points of services if we do the average on this period, because we were able somehow to put a better number of tires, sorry, in your distribution center in Europe. So after to do the business case, just to, I don't know if it could interest you, but I will do not give you the figure, but this is the way we measure the business case. We have because we have historics, we are able somehow to draw this kind of curve based on the services we are able to give to our customer. We have a cancellation rate. So in Europe, mainly, you can order a Michelin tire before 4 p.m. and you will be delivered next day. Okay, so it's a day plus one services, I would say mainly. And if we are not able to deliver the tire on day plus one, we give the estimated date, a new date of delivery to our customer. So if we have issues, so when you, sorry, I come back to this graph. So when you see red, it could be that the order has been canceled by the customer, or we have delivered it but later. Okay, so because when we are not able to meet the customer request date, we give him a new date, and the customer is able to say, okay, Michelin, you tell me that you will not be able to give me my tire tomorrow. Either I cancel my order, but I also indicate to the customer you will be able to have it in 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 10 days. So the customer maybe could wait a bit and so maintain his order. So thanks to this cancellation rate, so we measure the cancellation rates, and of course we have this kind of curve. So lower our service is, higher the cancellation rate is important. And we have seen also that for the high margin tire, so the big tire like 19 inches, 20 inches, and so on, the curve is really, when you do not respect the customer request date, the cancellation rate is really important. Okay, and so of course, if you have a gain of services, you are able to measure somehow a gain of sales, and so to measure your business return. And that's it for me. So I think the goal also to show what is in production today. So I will show you. I don't know if you have question.
Yes. If Emmanuel, there is one question. What is long tail in case of your company?
Okay, so long tail, the definition. So we have as many definitions that there is person in the company. So this is one of the issues. But the definition for the long tail here, sorry, are this one. I would say we take the tire we take the last 10 million sales tire. So all the CI is yes. So the last 25% of the sales here are our long tail, and roughly this is the tire whose the sales is lower or equal to 1 tire per day. I don't know if is it clear. It's a definition, but it's what we call long tail.
Thank you, Emmanuel.
And so if I come back to SAM, so this is in production. So we have the process is every week. We update. In fact, we update this tool. So the user has several indicators. The first one is this one. So sorry, it's a bit slow. So this one gives to the operational person several information. So this is the number of SKU that are managed by SAM every week. Okay, so you can see the COVID effect here, and this one is the curve I have just shown you. So all the SKUs that are, I will say, where SAM has done a recommendation, you can see the red. This is the services where the SKU has been impacted by SAM, and the blue is where SAM didn't act. So you can see here this is very erratic because this is we stopped to use SAM during the COVID period, mainly because the demand, in fact, goes down. So here you have the weekly demand. So you see the COVID effect somewhere here. You can see that the business is going quite at the normal rate, I would say, but during the COVID, it has a really big impact. So in fact, due to the decrease of demand, some hours automatically SAM stops to do any alerts, and also we had plenty of logistic issue because we were not able to have a person in the distribution center to ship to the customer. So anyway, it was not able to increase the safety stock even if we had an alert of SAM, because we were nobody in the distribution center to receive the tire and to ship it to the customer. So clearly SAM has been stopped during this period, but you can see that now for 2 weeks we have restarted SAM. So the red part is the part of the demand that is managed by SAM today, and the main part that is used by the operational, this is the recommendation part. So you have an Excel file where you have all the SKUs, so the date of the prediction, the item, the distribution center, so Fribourg, this is in Switzerland. You have the new safety stock recommended by SAM. You have the old one somewhere on the right, I don't know where exactly, and you have the gap between the SAM recommendation and the current safety stock target. So and the goal, so when the inventory manager is doing some small verification now with this tool. So this tool is really interesting for this UI because you have a mix of the past and the future. So you are able somehow to see what happened in this distribution center in the past and what is a projected thing for this distribution center for this item. And you can see typically I take the first alert, this one, where we recommend to have a 500 tire in the distribution network. You can see that, so this is the past, this is today. We target so quite to 0 tire, and so you can see that we had some orders in the past and we have orders in the future. So clearly the goal is to increase safety stock at the right level. We can see that after the standard system is reacting, but probably a bit late. So Sam is requesting to the inventory manager to put immediately 500 tire as a target for this distribution center. So this is a winter tire in Fribourg. And that's it for Sam. I don't know if you have any question, but today,
yes, Emmanuel, there is a few questions.
Yes, Cedric, thank you, Emmanuel. My first question is, all the tires you are selling, are they equipped with RFID tags in your example?
No, we don't have RFID today is used in for poids lourd, for PL tire, but we don't have RFID on the car tire. Even I think if it's a project, but I don't know where it is so far. But so we don't have any. We don't have any RFID.
This is my second question. That's why I started with this, because if you had RFID tag on each tire, you could track the product in your DC, in the final shop, so that you can have a real-time vision of the sellout, so that you could put in your machine more accurate data, so that you can be more and more relevant. Because managing SKUs at the item, what is possible thanks to RFID tag could be a good opportunity for you to be even more relevant in your predictions.
Yes, it's a good point, but you know what was our first surprise with this machine is that the quality of the prediction is very good, even with is already good, very good. We have you see we also follow this indicator, so to monitor the AI, because to ensure that with the AI is not giving us wrong information. And so far we have a relevance rate around 92%. So we can say that finally the Michelin is quite to have a shortage for inside the Michelin distribution network is quite predictable already with the level of stock, the level of order portfolio, the level of delay we could have on logistic, and the level of production we have. So you're right, probably we can increase it, but 92 is not so bad, I would say.
It's already good, yes. Yeah, thank you.
Emmanuel, I have a question, please. Please do. Please do.
Go ahead, please.
Sorry. Yes.
Now, I had a question, Emmanuel, on for prediction, especially on service in 15 days, etc. What kind of machine learning algorithms did you use for doing that, and on what was that built on?
So I had some hidden slides, so I wish this is the random forest model that gave the best results in terms of prediction. After, I'm not a specialist, but this is this type of model that give us today the best result.
Okay, thank you.
Emmanuel, I have a question. I think the title is great. Sky is the limit. It's great. So how is it organized in Michelin, this Sky team? Because here you are talking about one use case that is live, but you show a team before that is pretty large. So how many use cases? Are you reporting to supply chain or to, I don't know, CIO? Or how is it organized, this excellence around process in supply chain and with AI?
So today, in fact, the team I animate, so we have we are sorry, I forgot. We are 3 data scientists in Europe, so at Clermont-Ferrand. We have started also to have a data scientist at Pune in India. So Michelin data scientist in Pune in India. So in Pune, we have 4 other data scientists. The data engineer, we have 3 data engineers in Europe at Clermont-Ferrand, and we have 2 data engineers in India. And regarding the data analyst, the goal is to have the data analyst as close as possible to the final user, to the operational person. So we have one in North America and 2 in Europe. So the other subject we are dealing with are mainly forecasting subjects. So Sam is not doing any forecast. Forecast is really a complex subject. Sam is just, I would say, predicting a shortage. That is somehow very, it's much more easy. What we have discovered is that it's much more easy to predict shortage than to predict what will be the sale. So predict shortage, it seems to be easy with machine learning. Predict a forecast, do a forecast is a bit more complex. So the team, the remaining part of the team. So we have a team working on long tail forecast. So the first results are very good. So that's why we have deployed it in Europe. Now we deploy it in North America, and we'll deploy it after in China, Asia, South America. And we'll do all the region of Michelin. But it will take some time because we have the COVID impact. We have to study how to manage this crisis and how to how to do it. So the team is working on it, and we also are working on what we call short-term forecast. So the long-tail forecast is to do a tactical forecast. So the goal of the long-tail forecast is to allow to better produce the long-tail product. So what are the quantity we have to produce every month in order to meet the customer requirements? So how many to produce we will know thanks to this AI. And the goal after is to know where to deploy it. So maybe this slide will be. So in Europe, for instance, we have 12 plants. We have 15 distribution centers. The red point are distribution center, and the green are plants. And the goal, when you know exactly how many you have to produce, after you have to know where to deploy it, in which distribution center you have to deploy it. So it's what we call short-term forecast, because the goal is to do a forecast not 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 18 months in advance, but to do it maybe 1 month, 2 months in advance in order to know exactly where I have to send this production in order to meet the customer expectation. So this short-term forecast, we are currently doing it in Europe. We have faced some difficulties. It's not easy to do it, and we are starting it in North America too. So I will say two main other use cases: short-term forecast to better deploy the tire in your distribution network, and long-tail tactical forecast to better produce this famous long-tail product.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Any question? No, so I suggest we move to Martin for our last presentation about LVMH.
So let me show my screen.
Yes, we can see it, Martin. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. So I'm gonna present use case for Louis Vuitton. So brand of LVMH. Just to give a bit more precision on the scope. And the use case that has been done jointly with the supply chain team, what we call the lab, so what the data science lab team in Vuitton and the IS team. Our use case is about the forecast of new products. And when talking about forecast of new products for a brand like Louis Vuitton, it could be a lot of things. Because a new product is starting in the head of the designers, months ahead of the product being actually launched in our stores. We didn't start from that point. We did some trial, but it wasn't that concluding. We first built a use case on what we call the post-launch forecast or reforecast of the product. Let's say that from the buying session where all of our zone are committing on for each new product on sales potential, let's say. We organize all our production, distribution till the launch date based on those basically buyings that our zone have committed for. Once the product is launched, we start gathering very interesting data, so actuals, basically. And the idea for us was using those actuals to be able to reforecast as soon as possible the potential of the new products. For a brand like Louis Vuitton, it's something that is absolutely key. Just to give you some headlights for our leather good activity, which is roughly 70% of Louis Vuitton turnover. New product launches represent a bit more than 1,000 SKU per year, and around 20%, a bit more than 20% of our turnover. So we are talking about a large part of our business, and we are for Vuitton in a context where we own all of our retail, so we do not use any wholesaler, either digital or brick and mortar ones. So we are selling our goods on our own website or in our stores. This is the first point, and the second point is that we are never doing any sales on our product, meaning that a product that is out of our workshops has to be sold 100% of its price. So it gives a lot of pressure on the new product, especially because we are basing all our efforts on around 20% of the turnover based on this buying session scenario that has been built, let's say 5 months prior to the product launch. And so it's absolutely key as soon as we have the first market feedback to be able to tell to the industrial whether we should accelerate, keep the rhythm, or just stop the product on the one hand, and on the other end, on the distribution side, that we are sure that we are pushing our product to the right zone and then to the right stores, and we have around 450 of them. So it's just to give you some highlights about the new products for Louis Vuitton and what it represents for our supply chain. It's maybe to give you the spirit on which we worked on that use case. We know that when we are launching a new product, there are a lot of stuff that can be interesting to look at. For sure, the historical sales, so the first X days of sales of the product from its launch. But we know for sure that there are a lot of other stuff that are playing. Is there any reservation? Was the level of shipments or the stock quality okay for the launch? What are the level of tourists and tourist customer in Europe, in US? Is my product pushed on the website, and is there many views or not on the website? And you can think of millions of indicators, Instagram, stuff like that. So meaning that for a planner, it's absolutely not possible to take all those indicators into account. And even though there are one of those indicators that's giving a strong signal, for example, the basic one would be the level of shipment is poor, so I have a bad stock quality, so I cannot take that much lessons of the first day of launch. It's very complicated for the planner to take relevant actions and to attach the situation the planner is facing to something you already saw in the past. And as long as you are taking into consideration more than 2-3 data sources, it becomes just impossible to do it massively on all our 1,000 products we are launching every year. So it's a bit the spirit we had when we launched that use case with our lab, saying, okay, how could you help us in supply chain to take relevant decision, helping the planner understanding all the relevant data surrounding the launch of the product to help the planner doing two things. First, having of course more accurate prediction on the potential on the product first, but also how can we accelerate the decision and give feedback to the industrial as early as possible, because we know that each day that is passing is something that is additional products that are being produced or not produced, depending on the case, and that is in the end costing money to the company. So how do we accelerate the decision, and how do we improve the quality of that decision? So basically, I will not enter too much into detail. Maybe on that, it's a classical presentation we are doing. But basically, machine learning is helping us finding correlation, nonlinear correlation between all those data sources, learning on 2 years of new product launching history to help the planner, saying, okay, the launch you are looking at, you have many reservations, poor stock quality, strong over performance, so it's X% additional. Typically, it's X% additional versus your initial forecast. Or on the contrary, you have a super good stock quality, no reservation, poor first 3 days of sale. Okay, you can cut it. The product is not meeting its market. How do we structure that? It was our first use case for supply chain, and we try to do it in fun ways, also to get attractions of the teams, the supply chain teams, and we started in fact by organizing a Kaggle day with the help of LVMH. So Kaggle is a machine learning platform, one of the most known machine learning platform. So we gathered the top 200 Kagglers, which are the person contributing to that platform. So that are top data scientists, I would say, to work on these topics. And it was the first milestone, in fact, on our project. Before the project goes back to the LV lab, we started then implementing, taking the good ideas that we gathered through those two days hackathon. What are we doing exactly? Let's say a typical launch for Vuitton is a product launch done on a Friday. Why Friday? It's because we are retailers and people are buying the most on the weekends. This is something that is happening worldwide. So basically, to give the most potential on our product and to have a very strong impact on our product launch, we are launching most of our products on the Fridays, and the target of this machine learning algorithm is to give a first insight on the performance of the launch on the first Monday. So meaning 3 days after the product is actually launched. And why on the Monday? It's because the Monday is the typical day where we are reviewing our production plan. So it means that the key for us is to give on the first, let's say, production planning exercise following the launch, to give a first estimation of the potential of the product. Again, the goal is really to give as fast as possible the indication to the production. Okay, just stop it. It's not working, or just accelerate, do as many as you can, because we have a very, very strong over performance. And then we are repeating the exercise the first 3 Mondays following the launch. So 1 model after 10 days and 1 model after 17 days, and then the product is going back to a regular sales planning process. Sorry. So basically, this is what we are doing. It's a typical launch for us. So it's gathering data on a product, a region, the period of the launch, and then we are gathering a bit more than 100 KPIs. So being how much the sales of the first days, the shipments to our doors, and so the website traffic, the stock quality at launch, etc., etc. The aim then of the machine learning algorithm is to match the new launches we have done with what the machine has in base. So a bit more than 2,500 LG Leatherwood launches over 2007 and 2019, and now also 2019, to find the patterns and correlation with existing or already known launching scenario. In a nutshell, what it gives, and I would complete what Emmanuel already said, you can predict a new product with actually quite very simple variables. It was maybe a bit disappointed at first. We were quite excited about knowing how Instagram, website, traffic, etc., could weight on our launching performance. In fact, the first 2 indicators the machine learning is using is what was the forecast before the launch to help basically the algorithm trigger in which kind of product we are looking at, whether it's a bestseller or not. The historical sales, so the scenario, basically the machine learning algorithm has in its database. Of course, the first 3 days of sales and the stock quality. So those are the 4 main drivers, basically. So quite straightforward and the main stuff we were using prior to implement the machine learning algorithm, and then the reservation, price of the SKU, and the website information and stuff like that are in fact small factors on the final result given by the algorithm. What is also quite interesting for the teams, more than giving a result, we are also giving to the team qualitative information about the launch. This variable I'm showing you currently are, let's say, the average weight of each of those indicators in the decision of the algorithm. But what the algorithm is giving us in the end is the weight launch per launch and region by region of all the indicators used in the decision making. Basically, we are giving to the sales planner some headlights on, okay, maybe shipments was one of the main driver, and then because the launch stock quality was quite bad, or we have a very strong importance of reservation, stuff like that. So it gives the teams not only, okay, it's 200 and that's it, but it's 200 because you have poor stock quality and you have a lot of reservation. And it gives very, very qualitative feedback, so the sales planner can take its decision based on both competitive algorithm and also qualitative information. So avoiding the black box effect that we were fearing maybe before launching ourselves into machine learning. In terms of results, the results were quite interesting for us So maybe I will maybe not comment all of this. We are tracking basically very classical indicators. The main one being the RMSE. So basically the average error absolute of the algorithm, and we are basically comparing what the algorithm is giving us versus our current process, for old process, and just analyzing what additional performance or precision the algorithm is giving us. Two things that are quite interesting. The first thing is that we are gaining a bit more than 30% of precision, and this is true after 3 days, 10 days, and 17 days, and even it can go close to 50% additional precision in average for each of our launches that we could analyze. So it's an analysis that were run on 600 launches between October and March. What is also quite interesting for us, or could be a bit disappointing, but in the end, the importance is the progress we are making. It's the precision we are giving to the industrial. So basically, being able to tell to the industrial, or being able to give confidence to the sales planner. So how many SKUs I am putting between +30 and -30 of its final sales potential over its first month. So and that indicator raised by almost plus 10%, or plus 8%. And a last indicator we are looking at, it's what we have called the stability, which is also quite interesting for the planner. Stability is basically we are running the algorithm first based on the data we are gathering, and then we are also running the algorithm, but making small variation of each of the main data. So making, I don't know, plus 10% of the sales, plus 10% on shipment, or minus 10% on the shipment, and looking at the stability of giving a stability score of the algorithm. What we want to alert the planner is, okay, if you input +1 sale in the algorithm, it gives you plus 50% on the result. Okay, there is maybe something you should look at. Or on the contrary, is it something very stable? So meaning you are doing basically plus 10% on the sales and it gives the result at plus 10%. So it's something quite linear. So just to warn the planner on the case that might be interesting to look at. And the case is that, okay, you can just push the information given by the model. So I'm almost at the end of the presentation. I don't know if I have still time. One maybe last slide about what we learned basically down the road. First of all, it's very important to choose the use case. We had we lost almost 1 year by focusing on the sales potential, defining the sales potential of a product prior to the launch. So without having any sales data, and it was in the end too complex problem, at least a too complex problem to start with, because we never run any machine learning use case. So the first point is really to have a good use case, and one that is making sense for the teams also, and where of course machine learning automation can give good results. So meaning where you have a lot of data, a big uncertainty, or in the way of computing those data, meaning that classical statistics cannot solve the problematic easily. And of course, to be super attentive on the KPI you are following. And I'm saying that because we lost quite a few months, I would say, defining in the end what we want to look at, and convincing then the supply chain supply chain directors at Vuitton that what we were looking at is something that gives good value for the brand. Yeah.
Je te laisse
Martin.
respirer.
Yes.
Sauf une
Martin,
respiration.
je crois qu'il y a une
Ouais, vous
question de
m'entendez?
quelqu'un. Oui.
Oui,
Ouais,
absolument. Yes.
Plein de questions. La première datait d'il y a 10 minutes. Donc,
j'ai pas du tout vu. Ouais, ben on y va. Go ahead for the question.
Parce qu'il faut vraiment qu'on rende ces events interactifs. Hein, c'était un peu l'objet. Si tu peux revenir un peu en arrière, la première question,
Oui.
elle est relative aux critères que tu as mis là dans ta première map. Mais je suis désolé, je reviens en arrière. C'est
oui,
non,
enfin, aucun problème. J'ai pas vu du tout enfin, désolé.
Avant la page 7, peut-être encore avant, les critères que tu avais mis dans ton analyse.
Ouais.
Non,
Là.
Ouais, voilà ça. La question que j'avais, c'est, j'imagine que sur ces lancements, il y a aussi un impact, c'était sur la page d'après, je crois, hein. Il y a aussi un impact très fort de la formation des vendeurs, parce que forcément, ils ont un énorme impact sur les ventes. Il y a probablement des sur lesquels ils sont formés, incentivés, etc. Ça, c'est une. Et puis, je pense aussi à la publicité. Là, je trouve beaucoup de choses qui sont data, très chiffres. Et en fait, j'imagine que l'impact de la pub, l'impact des incentive vendors, en fait, je ne les vois pas du tout là-dedans.
Alors c'est un très bon point. Je pense que ça tient à plusieurs choses. Premièrement, c'est des choses qu'on n'arrive pas du tout à traquer aujourd'hui. Enfin, on n'a pas de possibilité de se dire est-ce que le produit a été bien poussé ou pas par le vendeur. C'est des choses, enfin auprès des vendeurs, c'est des choses qu'on a du mal qu'on ne capte pas. Même si effectivement, je pense qu'il y a pas mal d'impact. Il y a pas mal d'impact derrière. Après, les vendeurs vont pas être incentivés ou alors vraiment très 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 rarement au produit. Enfin, en tout cas, on va pas avoir de différence d'un produit à l'autre. En revanche, il peut sur la commission, en tout cas d'un point de vue pécunier, ça va être extrêmement rare. Après, de fait, on va avoir des focus marketing qui font que un produit peut être poussé dans les on va dire les briefs vendeurs. Des produits peuvent être poussés plus que d'autres, effectivement.
Bon, parce que voilà, je pense que l'enjeu de tout ça, c'est effectivement, c'est toujours pareil, c'est comment je sors d'une vision très centrée sur la supply chain et comment je la bouge vers une vision qui est plus une vision business. Bon, voilà. Donc ça, c'était un des points. L'autre point que j'avais par rapport à ça, c'est quand tu indiquais tes modèles 3 jours, alors quelques pages après, je dois être à la 8 ou à la 9, que quand tu disais alors, va sur la page là où tu avais la rosace avec les pourcentages, là où tu disais, en fait, somme toute, un apprentissage qu'on a eu, c'est que, en fait, le machine learning est revenu un petit peu vers des données un peu historiques, quoi, les données qu'on utilise probablement avant. C'est lié à quoi, à votre avis? C'est-à-dire qu'en fait, vous avez vraiment laissé le machine learning complètement libre dans toutes les dimensions de vous identifier les éléments les plus marquants, ou est-ce que c'est peut-être quelque part que vous l'avez un peu trop ingénierisé et que vous l'avez déjà un peu guidé vers ça?
Alors pas du tout. Ça c'est sûr que non, parce que alors, là il y a eu des heures de discussion autour de ça. Après on a eu un vrai boulot de data scientist derrière en disant mais on enlève des datas, enfin notamment la partie forecast, hein, elle nous a fait vraiment mal celle-là. Je dois dire. Donc on a essayé on a masqué, remis partiellement la partie forecast. Et essayer du coup juste après factuellement de comparer est-ce que le modèle s'en sort mieux avec ou sans. Après intellectuellement là, ce qu'il faut comprendre c'est qu'une forecast on cherche un nombre donc parmi beaucoup et donc du coup pour la partie forecast elle aide le modèle à se calibrer. On va dire, et ensuite le reste des datas sert à affiner. On va dire que si si le produit est censé être lancé pour 10 pièces, en tout cas que le commitment d'une zone était 10 pièces, on n'observera jamais que la zone a pu en vendre par le passé 1 million. ça n'existe pas parce qu'on prend jamais ce risque en termes de stock. Ce que ça veut dire aussi, c'est que le machine learning, et ça c'est une des limites, j'ai fait venir dans ma dernière slide, une des limites, c'est que le modèle, il nous donnera jamais le potentiel idéal supérieur d'un produit. La borne supérieure, basiquement, on la connaît pas parce qu'on prend jamais un risque de stock. Enfin, on sera toujours capé au risque de stock qu'on a pris historiquement. Donc le modèle, en gros, va être très très bon à couper. Ça, il n'y a pas de souci. Le modèle va être très bon quand même à nous indiquer la surperformance d'un produit. En revanche, il va jamais nous dire, ouh là là, là t'es en train c'est pas du tout un slow seller que t'es en train d'observer, c'est ton new hit bag et tu vas pas en vendre 10 par mois, tu vas en vendre 10 000 par mois. Ça, le modèle, il nous le dira jamais. Et à la fin, ça sera toujours, pour le coup, sur cette partie-là, un risque qui devra être pris par les équipes en fonction de ce que le modèle aura pu déjà dire, en disant attention, très grosse surperformance. Avec la qualité de stock qu'on a au lancement, voilà, on a tout explosé, donc le modèle voilà, va arriver à sa borne supérieure. Donc, il y aura une alerte du coup pour les équipes. En revanche, le modèle pourra jamais nous sortir ce qu'aurait pu être le potentiel plein du produit. Je sais pas si ça éclaire du coup
ça éclaire bien.
Votre point.
Moi, j'avais une question. Je sais pas si on a plus de questions, Patrick.
Oui, c'est le temps des questions. Allez-y, allez-y. On voit pas les mains se lever, alors allez-y. Hein.
Je suis désolé, moi, j'ai pas compris le principe des mains non plus. J'avais une question par rapport au Kaggle. Donc, il y a 200 data scientists, j'imagine brillants, qui ont dû travailler sur la question. Est-ce que le modèle qui est sorti du Kaggle, quelque part, c'est celui que vous avez réutilisé derrière, ou vous êtes reparti from scratch parce que c'était compliqué à utiliser, ou voilà, est-ce que ça a vraiment apporté quelque chose de Kaggle en termes de coding ou d'idées, ou est-ce que c'était juste pour valider le use case quelque part?
C'était plus pour des idées sur des méthodes. Ça reste un hackathon, donc c'est fait en 48 heures. Voilà, il y a tout un tas de choses qui n'étaient pas opérationnalisables. Après, ça a surtout servi de base sur les méthodes à utiliser derrière. Sachant qu'en plus, on avait déjà démarré 2-3 mois avant, donc ça nous a aussi alimenté dans les réflexions en fait, sur le coding pur. Je sais pas si ça répond à ta.
Si, merci, très clair, merci.
On a d'autres questions. Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un dans l'audience parmi les sociétés qui sont représentées aujourd'hui? Il y a quelques noms. Il y a GS1, il y a Renault, il y a Arkema, il y a Daher. Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui souhaite s'exprimer particulièrement sur un retour d'expérience de son côté ou pas? Là, on a parlé de Michelin et de LVMH, mais.
En fait, il y en a plein qui lèvent la main, Patrick, mais comme ils n'ont pas le micro.
Sinon, il y a aussi le système de chat pour poser des questions. Ouais. On regarde, mais.
On fait le wrap-up parce que j'imagine qu'à 16h, on a tous d'autres engagements. Je te laisse conclure peut-être, Patrick, un petit peu. Un mot.
Bah, écoutez, merci beaucoup à tous pour votre participation aujourd'hui. J'espère que ça peut vous éclairer sur voilà, des cas concrets d'application de l'IA pour la supply chain. Comme on vous l'a dit tout à l'heure, il y aura d'autres événements dans le cadre de Digital Supply Chain Aslog avec le RPA. François, je ne sais pas quand est-ce que sont les prochaines sessions avec l'IoT Data Exchange.
Un IoT, la semaine prochaine, on a un IoT, une présentation d'un radar qu'on co-brand Aslog et Wavestone, donc un radar d'innovation sur IoT appliqué à la supply chain. Et le prochain sera RPA au début du mois de septembre.
Très bien. Merci François. Voilà, donc on a peut-être encore une dernière question de Gabriel Rafour qui veut parler.
Oui, vous m'entendez?
Oui, on vous entend.
Oui, bonjour. Alors, c'était pas vraiment une question. Bonjour. C'était par rapport au partage. Enfin, nous, on aurait pu partager en tout cas ce qu'on a fait côté derrière avec l'intelligence artificielle, notamment sur des problématiques d'optimisation d'entrepôt ou de gestion de stock. Mais bon, je pense pas qu'on ait le temps là. d'en parler. Et sinon, j'ai juste une question pour le Kaggle. En fait, ça coûte combien de mettre en place? Comment?
J'aurais pas l'information, je suis désolé. C'était pas sur mon budget.
D'accord. Ok.
Voilà.
Zéro idée. Parce qu'en gros, globalement, eux, ils recherchent des problèmes souvent à hacker parce que c'est un peu leur délire. Mais
Oui.
quand un privé comme ça propose un sujet.
Ouais, en fait, il y a deux systèmes sur Kaggle. On peut poster la plateforme est libre d'échange. On peut poster des use cases. Et après, le prize money qui est mis derrière est à la discrétion, on va dire, de l'entreprise qui le met. Après, du coup, plus le prize money est intéressant, plus ça attire les bons Kaggler. Après, là, on était du coup sur un événement in situ, parce que Kaggle, sinon c'est juste une plateforme digitale. L'organisation de l'événement avec Kaggle, j'avoue que là, j'ai pas du tout le chiffre en tête.
Ok.
Je sais pas quoi ça veut dire.
Ok, merci à tous. En tout cas, c'était une première. Et puis, on vous enverra normalement un petit questionnaire pour nous donner quelques feedbacks. Hein. C'était notre première. On a tout un programme prévu dans les mois qui viennent. Et on essaie de garder des interactions comme ça à relativement petit nombre pour être capable d'essayer d'avoir des questions et de l'interaction et des choses très concrètes. Donc, écoutez, on espère vous revoir bientôt.
Merci beaucoup, c'était hyper intéressant.
Merci à tous et à la prochaine session.
Merci, bon week-end, merci pour l'organisation, Patrick.
Au revoir.
Merci, au revoir.
Au revoir.
Merci Emmanuel, merci Martin, merci Deepak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you, Patrick. Bye.